East off the coast of Venezuela. It's as the US Coast Guard continues to pursue a third tanker. Mr. Trump told reporters it would be smart for Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro to step down. Venezuelan officials say recent seizures of tanker vessels by the US are acts of piracy. The first one, taken by the US earlier this month, docked in southern Texas on Sunday. Let's speak to Brian Fonseca, director of Florida International University's Institute for Public Policy. Thanks very much for being with us. What is your understanding? What are the possible reasons for this president to be focusing on Venezuela at this moment?
Thanks, Geeta. First and foremost, I think the president has been focused on Venezuela. This is the second administration in which he's applied a maximum pressure campaign to try to dislodge Maduro as one of three standing authoritarian regimes in the Western Hemisphere. And I think that Secretary Marco Rubio has also been really focused, on disrupting authoritarianism in the Western Hemisphere. And if you look at the national security strategy that was just released, again, there seems to be a prioritization on the Western Hemisphere in dislodging countries like China, Russia, Iran from the Western Hemisphere as well.
Is what the US is doing legal, or is it piracy?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think there are some legitimate claims that the White House has. Venezuela has been an oil-producing country, since the early 1900s. It was a founding member of OPEC in 1960. And since, the United States has played a really important role in helping build and develop Venezuela's oil sector. There was expropriations to a national energy company or oil company in the 1970s. And then when Hugo Chavez came to power in roughly 2007, he expropriated the remaining American assets on the ground. He left Chevron in place to some degree, but he did expropriate American assets. And I think that the White House is claiming that those expropriations ultimately suggest that there are American rights on the ground because they were illegally expropriated. So I think that's the claim that the White House is making, to suggest that it has rights to what is being produced in Venezuela. And again, I think that's sort of underpinning the claims that the White House is making in terms of targeting Venezuelan oil and trying to keep it from the global energy market.
How far do you think this administration is prepared to go on this? Because Maduro doesn't look as though he is willing to stand down.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a tough question. I mean, I think right now, to your point, Maduro is calling what he thinks is a bluff by the Americans. The challenge is that, as the administration starts to articulate regime change, it's been very careful not to double down on the idea of regime change as being sort of the impetus for the military buildup in the Caribbean. But as sort of that seems to be glaringly, accurate, that it's about regime change, then the U.S., seemingly may push itself all the way to potentially some more targeted strikes within Venezuela to try to get to regime change. What the U.S. is hoping at this point is that the maximum pressure, the mobilization of military muscle off the Caribbean, the close incursions of lethality in close proximity to Venezuela will ultimately create a fracture, some type of fracture within the political elite or the military that will dislodge Maduro and see some transition back to democracy.
We are expecting a UN Security Council emergency session later today at Venezuela's request. But you started off by talking about US policy in other parts of the globe. Do you think this is going to be seen as American overreach? How much of it is just positioning?
Yeah, I think it's already being seen as American overreach, and that may have started early with this administration with tariffs. But I think that the U.S. is again, forcing sort of a more strong position in the hemisphere, particularly again close geographic proximity to the United States. And so I think it's hedging very much in terms of using a little more sort of hard, hawkish approach to foreign policy. That's something that I think this administration has sort of voiced. Even in Trump 1.0, there was a very hawkish foreign policy. In other words, it's not an American retreat from the world, but certainly America asserting its interests more intentionally, more directly. And I think that's what we're seeing in the case of Venezuela now, where the United States is, clearly asserting its interest in Venezuela by mobilizing the military, trying to cut off the economic lifeline to the Maduro regime, and sending messages to China, Russia, Iran, and others that the United States, is willing to go far to advance its national interests.
Brian Fonseca from Florida International University, thank you very much indeed for being with us. And we will be covering the UN Security Council meeting. It's holding an emergency session later today to discuss what the Venezuelan government has described as ongoing US aggression. This meeting is going to be held at Venezuela's request, and a list of speakers has just been released for that meeting. We're back in a few minutes. I'm Geetha Gurumuthy. This is BBC News.
Hello. We've seen some very heavy rain across southern France over the last several days, bringing some